So I have spoken about my conversion in one of my videos, my full story, but there's specific there's a specific transformation of the mind that I can delve into deeper. Okay, my apologies, but my name is Joshua Jansen. This is Confronting Chaos, where I pursue the big questions, and particularly Christianity and how one should live, and I'm studying philosophy, and this is an opportunity to unpack these ideas. Okay, so upon coming to Christ, what does that mean? The transformation one undergoes to now being in Christ, to walking in the ways of Christ. Because to become a Christian is not just to utter a prayer, but it's to be transformed to become like Christ. That is the ultimate goal of Christianity, so that we can all become one with Christ. Now, this is I'm going to merge my experience. So I was a person obsessed with virtue. I enjoyed the Stoic philosophers, the Greeks, and the idea of courage and self-control, and not being affected by life circumstances, and striving for the highest, carpe diem, and amor fati, and not letting life get hold of you, having the strength of mind to conquer one's day, and to control one's body, and to control how one conducts themselves in the world, and not let anyone else affect that. That's the virtue I aspire to. But in Christianity, there's a particular gentleness, and as Father Suzima in the Brothers Karamazov calls it, humble love. And humble love that is, by definition, self-sacrificial, extending oneself for the ultimate good of the other, and by doing that for God. And one can recognize love as the highest virtue, and then still not be in Christ. And I often say to people, when I try and explain my transformation of the mind when I became Christian, I don't always have the words to articulate it, so I use this illustration. The sort of affection I had for my mother, I then began to have for a homeless person. And I haven't really thought of saying it like this until right this moment, but the difference between those sorts of loves is the first one, loving of the mother, is familial and attachment. My mother is a part of me. There's a sort of we almost are one thing, so therefore because of our blood relation, I've come from my mother served me, thus I love my mother. There's a I-thou intimate connection. But then to love a homeless person, I didn't even think of it in this way at that time. I only could think of this illustration. But to love a homeless person is to say, I love someone that can provide me nothing. I love someone for the mere fact that they have sanctity, that by their mere humanity they are worth loving. They could be a murderer, they could be an adulterer, I have no idea, but I love them. They're homeless, they could be lazy, I love them. They could be, and then at the same time they could also be the most virtuous person I've ever met. Doesn't matter, who knows, yet I love them. And this is the Christian life. And that by loving someone like a homeless person, you love Christ as well, because this is the way that Christ walked. and by following in Christ's footsteps, you demonstrate your love for him. And then you get the question, okay, I love this love. It sounds good. It sounds right. I want to walk in this way. But can you walk in this way without fully adopting who Christ claimed to be? Is your belief, are you going to actualize that sort of love without believing in Christ as Son of God, as being a revelation of the divine? And I'd argue no. To love the homeless person, to love anyone simply for their humanity, is to recognize the logos within them, or the you can say you recognize the logoi, the manifestations of Christ within them. You can recognize the divine within them, and thus merely from recognizing the divine within them, you serve and sacrifice for them. And without that, the belief seems to be incoherent, and there's a lack of a calling to serve them, to love them. And therefore, to really be able to pledge your life on this, let's call it the humble love, the sacrificial love of Christ, is to know Christ as the Son of God, to know him as the Logos, as the divine revelation, because that means this is the highest virtue, the highest good, the highest way of being. And you can pledge your life on that. You can throw your life on that because it is the Logos, the divine revelation of how one ought to be. So if you don't adopt Christ, as Son of God, as God in the flesh, you cannot pledge your life on this, and you will not see you will not have this recognition of the logoi within those around you. And I was saying to a friend that in life we are looking for ultimately a purpose or a meaning, something that we can pledge our life on, something that we can die for. This for me is, Viktor Frankl has this idea that man needs meaning to survive suffering. Nietzsche has the same idea. We need a meaning to withstand suffering. So people will pledge their life on a political idea, on fighting for the environment, or fighting for their family, or there's something they'll pledge their life on. But in Christianity, the logoi is Christ within everything. And thus, by seeing Christ as Logos, there's a self-sacrifice, self-servitude in humility for all things. And thus you become a servant for all things because you serve Christ. And thus all the logoi is collected into Christ as the Logos. Thus, to be in Christ is to be the servant of all people, to be the high priest of all creation, as man was designed for. And thus you can pledge your life for the highest good in this love. And that is why I believe the faith in Christ as resurrected, as Son of God, is essential. And we cannot have a Jungian psychoanalytic or metaphorical understanding of Christ, but that we must pledge our life on Christ as the divine revelation, because if we do that, we adopt Christ as the Logos, we adopt him as the ultimate way of living. And if he's only just an option, we can never fully pledge our life on it. But if he is the way of living, we will treat all those as worth living for, and Christ as the ultimate person to live for. And in serving him, we serve the world. And not just in and in the highest form of love that can possibly conceived. Humble love, not self-servitude, not self-upliftment, not possessive, not because of attachment, but because that the divine has been written into the hearts of people and embedded in all creation, and that by serving that, we serve God. So Christ must be bowed down before us as Lord and God. And thus, and through that, we can pledge our life on the way, on the humble love of Christ. To serve the poor, to love your enemy, to do good to those who hate you, to be persecuted for this righteousness, for this sort of love. Because we can say that this logos, this way of being, is the way. And therefore nothing can take us out of that. And that is the Stoics, the ideal. They want to be in the logos. They want nothing to affect them. And Christianity in John 1 says, in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was God, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos became flesh. And through becoming flesh, we could know the Logos, and we could pledge our life on the Logos, and Christ would suffer for this sort of love. And because he suffered, we could also suffer, which means to say, nothing can take us out of this way. We can suffer, doesn't matter. We are going to love in the highest, and we will pray for our enemies in doing so. So you must have the faith, and faith is not just a wishy-washy idea, but it's to transcend what has been revealed to you. So we can see the love of Christ being revealed to us. We can get a sense of the divine. We can get fragments of the truth. But ultimately, we cannot have an exhaustive idea. We cannot see God in its fullest. But we can recognize that Christ is the path. And that to have faith is to walk in that path to death and in suffering. And to find the rest in knowing that this is the path and the way that a human ought to live. That's enough for me. And for me, this was ultimately, and at the end of the day, I cannot know for certain, but in all my being, I can say that I can't see another way to live. There is no greater way to live. But it must be adopted with the full faith in Christ as Lord and God, to see the divine in your fellow neighbor as well. God bless.